Hi, it's Ike from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book to read for you. Today's book is Cinderella, that was released March 4th, 1950. Now, this is the book version of the movie from 1986. So let's get started. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful little girl. Everyone loved her because not only was she beautiful, but she was also good. Atlas, her mother, died, and the girl and her father were very sad. Time passed, however, and her father decided to marry again. He chose for his new wife a widow who already had two daughters of her own. Although those two girls could have been pretty, they were so bad tempered and cruel and spiteful that they always looked ugly. One day Cinderella's father died, and she was left alone with her stepmother and the ugly sisters. They hated their young stepsister, and so did their mother. They soon turned her into their servant and told her, "Your place is here in the kitchen. You are our servants now. You will have to see that the kitchen fire is lit each morning and the house swept clean. Cleaning out the cinders is just the right kind of work for somebody like you." Then they both said, "And we should call you Cinderella because you will always be amongst the cinders." So Cinderella became the maid of all work. She swept clean and dust all day long, and her clothes were in rags. All she had for a bedroom was the attic, but all the animals were her friend. In the morning, birds sung their sweetest song for her and whispered to her that one day Prince Charming would come and take her away with him. Some of Cinderella's friends were mice. She always made sure to keep some cheese for them. Her favorite mouse Jack, was so fond of her that he would done anything for her. One day Jack rushed to Cinderella saying, "You must come, Cinderella." "Why? What's the matter?" she asked. "Follow us and you'll see," he answered. Jack had found a new little mouse who didn't know Cinderella. "We must give him a name," Cinderella said. "What about Gus?" The little mouse nodded his head happily. Later, Cinderella gave him a little sweater and cap, which she had knitted for him. Every morning, Cinderella's first task was to feed the chickens and the hen. The hen wasn't very bright, but Cinderella always kind to them anyway. She usually mixed some cheese with the grain. The hen didn't particularly care for cheese, but the mice loved it. So whenever Cinderella called them, the mice came, running. "Enjoy your cheese," she always said. "Watch out for the cat." Jack suddenly said. The little troop of mice stopped short. "Look out," Jack said, lowering his voice. "That's Lucifer. He loves mice. I mean, he loves to eat them. Of course, don't be fooled. He isn't sleeping at all. He's only pretending, and then when you think he is fast asleep, he jumps up and grabs you with his big paw." Jack, who was brave and liked to show off, decided to go out anyway. He tiptoed out of the hole and around the cat. "I have got you," Lucifer said when he saw Jack, but he always was too late. Jack jumped to safety, in a teeny tiny hole. Meanwhile, all the other had time to get away. As soon as the mice was in the courtyard, they all rushed to the pieces of cheese that Cinderella had thrown. The hen got angry when they saw their food being taken away. Gus, who was quiet, daring for so young a mouse, started arguing with one of the hens. Don't make such a fuss. There'll be plenty left for you, he said as he continued to pick up as much cheese as he could carry. Jack, who was hiding in a hole where Lucifer watched them, saw Gus carry his load of cheese across the kitchen, not thinking about the cat at all. Lucifer immediately spotted him and quietly crunched down through or thought to himself, what a good meal that plump little mouse and cheese would be. He got ready to pounce on the mouse. When Gus saw him, he dropped his food and began running frantically. But it was almost too late, and the cat was just about to catch him when those when there was a big bang. When Gus turned around to see what was happening, he saw the crafty cat laying on the floor, not moving. It was Jack who had saved Gus by dropping a broom on Lucifer's back. You're fortunate this time, he said, but you must be more careful, my young friend. Drat, the two sisters and their mother always woke up at the same time and rang for Cinderella. Poor Cinderella had to rush them their breakfast, otherwise they started shouting and calling her names. The bell stopped ringing, and Cinderella carried the trays, hurried upstairs, but the mean sisters and their mothers was already yelling at her. What are you doing? What a deli you are. If you don't come at once, her stepmother threatened, I'll have you iron my entire wardrobe. Poor Cinderella was used to complaints and threats. She heard them several times every day. Meanwhile, in the royal palace, the old king was bemoaning his fate. How unhappy I am. Why, what's the matter, your majesty? The chief official of his royal household asked. Your majesty owns the most beautiful palace, but there are no wars in your country, and your son, the prince, my son, that's exactly it, the king interrupted. He is the one who caused all my trouble. The only thing he is interested is in riding horses and hunting. I was already married at his age. I have an idea, said the chief official. Why don't you give a big ball for his birthday? Perhaps he'll find a girl he would like to marry. The following day, a messenger could be seen taking invitation to all the houses in the kingdom. Will you give this letter to your mistress? The messenger said. When Cinderella opened the door, it's an invitation to the grand ball at the palace. He added, continuing on his way to deliver more invitations. Cinderella's stepsisters was very excited when they heard about the invitation to the grand ball at the palace. They were so excited they could hardly eat anything for 2 whole days. They could already picture themselves getting married to the prince. Cinderella, what are you doing here? Her stepmother asked. Why don't you go back to your work instead of wasting time? Stepmother, Cinderella began hastened. I was wondering if I could go to the ball too. What an idea, laughed the two unkind sisters. You can't even dance, and you don't intend to go to the ball in rags, do you? In the attic, the mice, Cinderella's little friend, was all waiting for her. "You'll be the loveliest girl at the ball," they squeaked, with a happy smile. "But I only have this old dress, which was my mother, and it won't be good enough for the Prince Ball." "Don't worry, we'll fix it up for you," the mice exclaimed together. Cinderella had to go and scrub the floor that Lucifer the cat had perfectly dirty when she had finished, and everything was as bright and new. She started to go into her room and tried to make her dress ready for the ball. Just then the two stepsisters called her. "Cinderella, you must do our hair for us. We must look as pretty as possible because the prince himself will be at the ball." Cinderella sighed because she thought that she would never have a chance to get ready in time for the ball. She had to do the But she had to do the ugly sister hair and iron their gowns. She tried her best to make the two sisters look as pretty as possible, which was not very pretty at all. She didn't know that why, while she was working, her friend, as they had promised, had busied themselves to make her a beautiful dress for the ball. They had found a pattern and had worked all afternoon. Everyone had been helping. The bird had to help when the mice couldn't reach. At last, the two sisters were ready for the ball, and Cinderella was left to herself. Her dress was finished, thanks to the good work of her friends, and they had hidden to see Cinderella's surprise when she saw it. Clever Gus and Jack had managed to hide some jewelry and ribbon from the ugly sisters, and to take away, even though Lucifer was watching. Night had already fallen, and Cinderella looked out the window and saw the windows of the palace all lit up, and she felt tears well up in her eyes because she would never be able to go to the ball. She went up to her room in the attic, but when she opened the door, the prettiest dress she had ever seen was there. She could hardly believe her eyes. "Isn't this my mother's old dress? You are wonderful. How can I ever thank you?" she exclaimed. "All you have to do is put it on, go to the ball, and have a wonderful time," all the animals said with great excitement. When Cinderella put on the when Cinderella put on her dress, some jewelry, she looked so pretty that the mice and birds all began to sing. "Cinderella is the prettiest girl in the whole kingdom." Cinderella went down the stairs, but as soon as her sister saw her, they grabbed her dress and began pulling so hard that it tore into pieces. In no time at all, by the time they were finished, Cinderella's beautiful dress was in rags. The ugly sisters left for the ball with their mothers without even sparing a glance for their unhappy victim. All Cinderella's friends was very sad when they saw her sobbing. What could we do to comfort her? they asked each other. They looked up at the stars, and suddenly one of them started growing bigger and bigger until it turned into a fairy. It was it was Cinderella, fairy godmother. She looked at Cinderella and said, "Poor child, look at what they have done to you." At first, Cinderella could hardly speak. She was so amazed. Then she managed to say, in a whisper, "Oh, I long to go to the ball at the palace. Your wish is granted," smiled the fairy. Cinderella's heart leaped on leaped at these words, but almost at once her face fell again. "I cannot go," she said unhappily. "I have nothing to wear and no way to get to the palace." "Leave that to me," her godmother said. "Just do as I tell you, and all will be well. First, bring me a fat pumpkin from the garden." Cinderella did as she was asked. Although she was wondering what use a pumpkin could be, as soon as she put the big pumpkin down, her fairy godmother touched it with her wand, and it would transform into a suspended white coach. "How wonderful!" Cinderella exclaimed. "But what use is a coach without something to put?" "Trust in me," said her godmother, and with her wand she touched the mice who had been standing around watching those. This is how Gus and his friends were turned into four beautiful horses. Cinderella was so astonished at what was going on that she could only stand and stare. "Hurry," said the fairy godmother. "There is only still one more to be done if you want to get to the ball tonight." With those words turned the dogs into young coach drivers and Jack into a footman. "Only one thing remains," the fairy said. "You cannot go to the ball in rags." With her wand, she touched Cinderella, who dragged changed into a shiny satin gown and whose wooden clogs became a gleaming pair of dainty glass slippers. Cinderella was now ready to leave for the palace. As she was stepping into the coach, her fairy godmother said, "Cinderella, I have but one command. You must return before midnight. If you do not, my magic spell will no longer work. The coach will change back into pumpkin. The horse will change. The horse will become mice, and you will be in rags." "I promise," said the guard as the coach pulled away. When she arrived, everyone wondered who could be in such a beautiful coach. Is it a king? Is it a queen? Or maybe a prince? No, it's not a king, a queen, or a prince. It is no one but Cinderella, who just a moment ago was still in rags. "How happy I am," Cinderella thought. "The ball is just starting." And she began ascending the gigantic stairways. The prince, who hadn't yet found a partner to his taste, was waiting to open the ball. He hadn't especially liked any of the women or girls who were attending the ball. Up on his balcony, the king and his chief official was very upset about the prince not wanting to dance with anyone. But when Cinderella reached the entrance to the ballroom, she looked so beautiful that all the guests stopped. dancing to look at her. Wonderful, who is she? Who is she? They whispered. What is her name? Where is she from? Even the ugly sister couldn't help staring. She must be a great princess from another kingdom, they said, never dreaming they were looking at their own stepsister from across the ballroom. The prince gazed at her. Never before in his whole life had he seen anyone who looked so adorable. He hurried to her, clapping her hands to. He begged her to be his partner. Cinderella danced and danced with the prince the whole evening. Suddenly, she noticed that it was only 15 minutes before 12 o'clock. Remembering her fairy godmother word, she curtsied and rushed away, even though the royal prince pleaded with her to stay. She ran down the stairs as fast as she could. Cinderella jumped into her coach, and only when she was seated did she notice that one of her glass slippers, was missing. I lost one of them while I was rushing down the stairs, she thought. Almost immediately, Cinderella heard the first stroke of midnight, and by the time the 12th stroke ran out, her fairy godmother prediction came true. There was a big flash of light, then smoke surrounded Cinderella and her coach. When she was able to see again, the spell was broken. No coach, no horse, no footman remained. Everything had disappeared. All was left was Cinderella in rags, a dog, a few mice, and a big pumpkin. The king was too old to stay up very late, and as soon as he had seen that the prince had finally found the girl he was longing for, the king had fallen asleep. He dreamed that he was a grandfather, and that his grandson was playing riding on his back. The following morning, Cinderella had the strange feeling of having had a beautiful dream, except that there was the glass slipper. When she looked at it, she could almost hear the violin playing again, and was able to greet her stepmother with a happy smile. Meanwhile, after Cinderella had so suddenly left, the prince did nothing for some time, but glared at the slipper which had been brought to him. Glad that he was in love with the owner of the slipper, the glass slipper. After a while, he aroused himself to some action. Messenger was all sent to all corners of the land with a to who foot right to a foot the slipper fit should be the prince's bride or the prince bride. All the kingdom women and had to try the slipper on, but so tiny and delicate was Cinderella's foot that the slipper fit none of them. When it was Cinderella's stepsister's turn, it was even worse. One couldn't get her foot in the slipper at all. The other pushed so much to her foot to fit it that the slipper broke into pieces. The chief official of the royal household was bemoaning his fate when Cinderella, who had been watching the scene, timely asked if she too could try the slipper. Her stepmother and stepsister stared and laughed, and told her she should go back to her room at once. But the chief official said, "All must try. It is the command of the prince." But unfortunately, the slipper had broken. Cinderella then handed him the other slipper, and he tried it on her foot. To the dismiss of the ugly stepsisters and their mother, it was a perfect fit. "It must be a mistake," they groaned loudly. When the prince saw Cinderella for the second time, he immediately recognized her. "At last I had found you," he said softly. "And I had found you too," Cinderella said, her eyes shining with happiness. Soon wedding bells was ringing through the land, and the people feast and rejoice. Everyone was invited to the wedding, and the only one who didn't come was Cinderella's stepsister and stepmother. The prince and a relentless, happy Cinderella was married. They lived happily ever after, and the old king had many grandchildren. So that was Cinderella from 1986, and Cinderella was released at the theaters on March 4th, 1950. So please like, subscribe, share, and comment, and have a groovy day. We have another video coming out real soon.